My extreme pleasure to go ahead and get us started tonight with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Kelsey Price. She's our lead-off presenter. Kelsey is an environmental studies major, and she is graduating in March of 2023. Kelsey is pursuing honors and currently holds a 4.0 GPA. That is impressive. And as you'll see from the nature of her work, she has a passion for the law and plans to pursue law school after she graduates. The title of her presentation, Salmon, Culverts, and the Court, What Happened and What to Expect. Her host organization was the Coast Salmon Partnership. Her site supervisor there was Mara Zimmerman. Mara's in the house with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And her faculty advisors were Todd Wildermuth of UW Law and the visiting faculty member Lawrence Waters. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Kelsey to the stage. Kelsey!
Test. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I couldn't be more familiar with the importance of salmon in Washington state. Their importance spans a broad spectrum, ecologically, culturally, and economically. It is for all of these reasons that declining salmon populations spark concern throughout the state. To many of us, the concerning status of salmon is familiar. In fact, as of 2020, 14 species of salmon and steelhead were listed as at risk of extinction under the Endangered Species Act. This frightening fact has driven action in recent decades. With these declines, habitat restoration is critical. Fish passage barriers like culverts have been identified as threats to salmon populations and also violations of tribal treaty rights. These treaty rights have been the focus of litigation in recent decades. With a focus on habitat restoration, I decided to research the role litigation played in addressing infrastructure and salmon treaty rights in Washington state. Additionally, I dove into the implications of this litigation. Over this past summer, I worked with the Coast Salmon Partnership, analyzing and extracting data from old stream survey reports that detailed stream manipulation. This data was then layered onto an ArcGIS map where stream segments can be connected with their history. Alongside my internship, I supported my interest in environmental law and salmon habitat restoration with a literature review, legal analysis, and the use of expert interviews to uncover patterns and connections between salmon populations, infrastructure, and litigation. To begin with my results, I will start with one of the most historic legal discussions and negotiations. In 1854 to 1855, Washington's territorial governor negotiated treaties with multiple tribes. Each treaty contained a fishing clause securing the tribe's right of taking fish at all usual and accustomed grounds and stations in common with all citizens of the territory. This language became critical to the many legal discussions that came after. Throughout the 1900s, the relationship between tribal and non-tribal fishermen was fraught with conflict. Tribal fishermen were being arrested for harvesting salmon despite their treaty rights. In 1970, the United States government, on behalf of 7 treaty tribes, filed a complaint against the state of Washington to enforce these treaty rights. This case, U.S. v. Washington, commonly known as the Bolt decision, resulted in the 1974 opinion that the tribes have rights to share equally with non-tribal fishermen, thus allocating 50% of the harvestable number of fish to treaty fishermen. In 2001, 21 tribes with the federal government sued the state of Washington, alleging that the state's poorly constructed or maintained road culverts created serious impediment to salmon. In 2007, the district court ruled in favor of the tribes. After multiple challenges by the state, in 2013, the district court released an injunction requiring the state to increase their efforts at removing state-owned culverts. This injunction was affirmed by the Ninth Circuit Court in 2017, and planning began for construction. This 2013 injunction meant that WashDOT began working with local engineering firms to replace culverts by targeting geographical areas. As you can see, the red and orange dots depict individual culverts needing to be replaced within the U.S. v. Washington case boundary. This image shows the 29 culverts targeted by the Coastal 29 Culvert Removal Project. This project is planned to begin construction in 2027 and is estimated to cost $140 million. We can expect to see further culvert removal operations in the future, such as the Padden Creek culvert removal. Notice the difference in passage width. A wider passage allows fish to move freely up and downstream. Projects like this and the previously mentioned Coastal 29 are direct results of the 2013 Culvert Case injunction. In conclusion, I reflect back on my original questions. The depicted summary of litigation and legal discussion played a vital role throughout the past 150 years, ultimately resulting in positive ecological progress for salmon, and as it should be, an acknowledgement of tribal treaty rights. These cases are a success for salmon and show the impact the tribes can have on restoration. Unfortunately, they also depict a greater and darker theme of the relations between the tribes, the state, and the state's pattern of ignoring treaty rights. Lastly, it is important to highlight the risk and burden the tribes undertook to obtain an ecological outcome that benefits everyone in Washington state. It is clear that this burden should not be solely for the tribes, but we should thank and acknowledge their efforts. We must also require our state to do a better job. Finally, I would like to thank my amazing site supervisor, Mara Zimmerman, my faculty advisors, Todd Voldermuth and Lawrence Waters, as well as Dawn Oates, Karen Alston, and my friends and family for making this possible. Thank you so much for listening.
All right, well done. Do we have questions for Kelsey?
Yeah, in the back over there.
Are there any other big projects you know of as a result of the Culvert case in Washington?
Yeah. Oh, okay. She's asking if there are any other projects that were a direct result of the 2013 Culvert case injunction. Like I said, the previously mentioned Coastal 29 is a direct result of that, but it's actually in the bidding process for engineering teams right now called Kitsap 29 in the Seattle area, where we can expect to see another 29 culverts targeted for this removal. But this project is going to be about $350 million, so we can look forward to that.
Other questions? Any other questions for Kelsey?
Yeah.
You said you did expert interviews, but you didn't talk about them very much. So who did you interview, and what did you find out through those expert interviews?
Yeah, I interviewed Dawn Oates, who's a principal engineer at the KPFF Consulting Engineers, which is where I got most of my information about the ongoing projects. A lot of that is not visible in any literature review or widely known. You can find it on like WashDOT's planning site, but I really needed a lot more expert on-hand information to be able to go in depth and show that this is really a direct result. And then I also had an interview with Karen Alston, who is a senior assistant attorney general for the Quileute Indian Nation, and she was able to help me kind of realize the conclusions and put together the fact that the tribes undertook this massive outcome that lasted decades, and really understanding that that was a major risk and burden that actually benefited everyone in Washington state. It wasn't just the benefit of the tribes, and she really helped me realize that we should really be thankful for those tremendous efforts they undertook.
Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey.